Hey, thanks for tuning in. This is a weekend review for the week ending May 27th, 2022. Happy Memorial Day. You want to take a moment to remember those who have lost their life while serving their country. Thank you. So let's move on. All right, so here's the Q2 performance so far. XLE and KWEB are leading the way. XLE APA, XLU, and then pretty much everything else is like, if you're down less than 10% on the quarter, you're in the top 10%, if that makes any sense. And the leaders here are APA and XLE, XLU, XLP, going back to March 23rd, but if you go to April 1st, yeah, they're up about 13%. So again, it still is energy and commodities. Yeah, that's about it. And if you go look at the year, that's pretty much all we've seen all year. So what I see, and again, is the trend is up on energy. This is not debatable, but it is hard for me to buy up here, and we'll get into that later. So let's take a look at the S&P 500. We've got 3 up days, and if you can see the close, 397.55, and the open, 398, so you've got a gap each day. So we've got 1 gap, 2 gap. If they gap up on Tuesday, stone cold sell, especially if they tag the 40. And what are the odds they're going to come all the way up here and not tag the 40? Right? And then from here, what do you anticipate? They've got to come back to the 5. It's just how this works. And the Bollinger Band, the 5 right now is over here at 404, 405, right at this gap. So they need to test this gap. And if you look, it's also this breakdown candle high and that gap that's left open. But if you can see, there's a gap there, there's a gap here. I mean, there's a lot of gaps to the upside. And this gap down here, didn't come on any crazy volume. So it's a common gap. I would expect it to get filled this sequence. And again, the power of 3, right? Hard to be a buyer up here below a declining 40 and all this supply. In this market, it's paid to be a buyer at the bottom of the bands. It's paid to be a buyer when you've captured the 5. So captured the 5 here. Retest and hold. Now we're on day 5 of this sequence. These sequences only last for 5 to 9 sessions anyways. So now we're looking for this to end. Now you look at the weekly and you say, well, wait a minute, that's a beautiful weekly candle. Yep. And these moving averages are showing us all the trapped longs. And we did have this trend line tag, and we did have the TD913 sequential buy set up on the daily. That is playing out, and we are in day 5 of that sequence. We are to expect 4 more days of upside before the next leg down. Now, certainly, price can close the coming week above the 10, above the 20, right? And ideally above 440. What you'll set up is this left shoulder, head, right shoulder, and then sometime around the election, you can have a bull market again. I don't believe the bulls are anywhere near out of the woods. The monthly time frame has not changed at all, right? You still have more bear momentum this month than you did the last month. And that has been true for 1 year. So, again, you can bet that somehow the momentum is going to show up and you can be the first person to the party. And maybe this daily flips to the weekly, flips to the monthly, and the quarterly, and everything is all back up. That's not what I see. Right? We see the daily here. I see ADX at 5, so it's not trusting this move higher. What you want to see is stock prices go up and ADX go up. So what we have now is stock go up, ADX go down. That's not good. And PPO is way below 0. So any rally back up to the 0 line will lead to a sell, more downward pressure, and then another chance to go. Again, what would change this? Get above the top of the band, close above the top of the band for 1, 2, 3 sessions, and escape all of these downtrends. But the reality is, by the time that happens, especially if it's this sequence, right? What do I mean this weekend? Just this wave, something like this. It's going to be out of juice. It's going to need to do this, right? Put in this, left shoulder, head, right shoulder look to exhaust supply. There's just too much overhead supply. So while I'm bullish, I'm looking at these charts, every single one of them, with lots of skepticism. I see, momentum is flipped up on the daily and the hourly on essentially every chart, but I'm not seeing broad participation. Right? We do have 3 80% up days back to back to back, which in and of itself is a breadth thrust. 2 back to back is a breadth thrust. The trend did what it did, like we talked about. We'll review that again in a second. So we've got some improving breadth, but what we don't have is price above the 20. No. Is price above the 10? No. Is the 10 sloping up? No. Right? Is PPO above 0? No. Is PPO in a bullish configuration? No. Right? So I know it was a good week. It felt good. Made some money. But when I look at this, if they continue this strength into Tuesday, even Wednesday, they could close at the high on day on Tuesday. It sets up the sell for Wednesday. I mean, there isn't much they can do to change my mind except close the week above the 20. And here's the deal. The last time they did that, after rallying, 10% or whatever, just to close above the 10 and the 20, was a trap. What they need to do is go sideways to escape. Let the moving averages come down, slowly get above them, and that be it. There's just too much downward momentum for things to just reverse and just go to straight to all-time highs. That's just not going to happen. So what's more likely to happen is a rally into the 10 this week, sell, come down to the 5. And if they want to start the week with some red, they can go inside, tag the 5, then go for the 10. But again, I don't see a way out of this without coming back down to that 400 level. At minimum. So we'll move on to the next one. Let's take a look at the Qs. Barely captured the 5. I mean, these are all the same charts. They're all under immense downward pressure. The Qs look the weakest, right? SMH, which is the transports, captured the 10. So that's leading higher, along with, in my opinion, IWM. But again, IWM's not above the 10 yet. IWM is leading, has held this higher low, and is now putting in what appeared like, you can see on the weekly here that the higher lows have held, right? And this low at 188.09, that's going to be the test. So, again, sell, sell, sell. It doesn't matter what happens. It's a sell. Any strength, sell it. Then you can buy it again. That's how it works. When I look at this is a sell. You can bet your bottom dollar. All right, what changes that? Well, get above 193, get above 200 for a week. Then we can talk about much higher prices. But until you do that, there's no way, right? And I want to point out, I was looking for a reversal this month. This is a TD9 buy setup on the monthly into a former breakout area, the bottom of the band, the weekly 200, the monthly 40, hasn't rallied in 9 months, in 6 months, straight down 30%. ABC structure, this is the home run bet that no one wants to talk about. It's IWM. And we're getting the reversal candle that you need to see. There's your doji. Now, what does that mean? Well, if I'm right, and this is a longer term reversal, you're going to find supply sometime early in June. They're going to paint the monthly candle on all of these indexes, make them look like reversals. Then they're going to retest the lows of these candles. 1, 2, if they gap up again, it's 3 gap ups. Who's buying that? There's no one left to buy, right? Into a declining 40, into this trend line. Right? That's a declining 20. This 20, this 10, that's just a stone cold sell. So from where I sit, it's almost a given that we're going to go up. If we go up, that it's a guaranteed sell. Guaranteed. And then you look to buy back at the 5. And right now the 5 is 182. So if they start the week by Tuesday, anytime on Tuesday, and they're at 191, that's the high on the week. That'll be it. No doubt. And it's a sell. Let's talk about energy for a second. Everyone loves XLE. Okay. Look, what's not to like? All the thing does is just go straight up forever and ever. What's not to like, right? All it does is go straight up. Oh, that's what's not to like. So here was what looked like a head and shoulders. Maybe it played out, maybe it didn't. This also looks like a head and shoulders. XLE 91, huge supply. Hey, look, maybe they go for one all-time high. Maybe they want 101. Okay, so you're telling me, right? The reward of 13% for, remember, mean is SMA 10. 13% for a risk of losing 25%. So negative risk reward. Let's say the risk is just EMA 5, which she touches every week. Every week she touches the yellow line. Okay, so the risk is literally 14%. So I'm going to risk 14% to make 14%. That doesn't sound like a good trade. This trade is over. I'm sorry. I know everyone wants to think World War III and commodities and inflation and commodities and blah, blah, blah. But I promise it's driven by your bias. It just is. Look at the chart. If this was a penny stock, you would say, watch out. All right? There just isn't much left in this trade. All right? This is the target. Even if it's all-time highs, great. If it's a little bit higher, great. Then there is another leg up for these guys. And maybe you do get 30%. And maybe the risk is about 1-to-1 or 2-to-1. Right? I'm not saying don't own these. What I'm saying is, at the end of the bull market, which it's possible that's where we are, what happens? Everything falls. Oil falls too. They just fall last. And I know, you've got your signals and they're going to take you out of the trade. Okay, well, if your signals are taking you out before this yellow line, they're not good signals. If they're taking you out before this orange line, they're not good signals. Right? Somewhere between this orange line and this green line. Again, right as it closed, you're risking 6%. So you buy anything, and just assume you should lose 6% right off the bat. And what's your upside reward on this trade? I mean, even if this is the bull flag pattern, you're there. It's 91. So again, I can't pull myself to do it. And I was all over this sector. I loved this trade. I wish I played it more here on the 10 ad on the monthly. I didn't like the look of this candle. But again, when they did this little up and down and held the 10 twice with these two dojis, that's really all you needed to see. I should have been more comfortable with that. But again, I wasn't. I played from here all the way into here. I had a great run. Now, what I'm learning is wave 5 of commodity cycles is better than wave 3, unlike equity cycles. And that's okay. Just got to learn these things and move on and not spend any time on it, really. So let's go look at Bitcoin real quick, which I think is bottoming. She did have the momentum flip up here over the weekend. As you can see, daily momentum up. But to me, this is, this is tough, man. It's just like everything else. Like, even if it rallies, it's a sell and then it's a buy again. I don't, from where I sit, I don't see how all of these things can just rally right through the declining 40s, the declining 20s. It's just not going to happen. Not on the first tag, right? And if it does, then we learn something new and then you can adjust accordingly. But until then, you assume it's going to fail. That's the high probability bet. The high probability bet is not to sit here and assume that because we're below every moving average on the weekly from a short... Look, all I care about, for the most part, you could turn all these indicators off, right? All of them. Let's get rid of 20 to 40. Let's get rid of the 20. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Boom. Okay. Look, what do I have left? The 10 and the 20. Sorry, the 5 and the 10. Till we can get out of these, I don't care. Right? You're in a downtrend. There's nothing to do here. There's nothing to do. I'd love it if there was something to do. Okay? How will there be something to do? Get outside of this downtrend. Right? It just is what it is. And if you just look at it like this, we are at the point where you can buy. I'm not saying avoid. I'm saying we've had the weakness into the 25K. That was my level. We've now bounced a little bit. Okay? Whatever bounce we get, it's a sell. It's a sell at the 5. It's a sell at the 10. It's a sell at 37K. Then it becomes a buy. And from that configuration, you can get out of here. That's how you get out. It's not, you don't get out of here just by doing this. That's not what's going to happen. So, same story in Bitcoin. Let's take a look at bonds, right? Capturing the 5. Momentum is curling up, just like she did back here. From where I sit, again, bonds, if they can get above this 119, 122, right? So the close here was 119.08. The high of this candle was 119.31. Okay. Until they can get above 119.31, And I could be able to get above 121 and ultimately this gap at 125. Right? So this is the level where I believe bonds are just going to go sideways. Again, something like everything else. That's what I'm looking for. But I will say it's getting close. And while we have that, let's take a look at some of these ratios. So the IWM QQQ stalling out at a very critical point. We're going to see how this resolves. Again, still in an uptrend, right? But momentum rolling. Just had the 40 cross above the 200, just had the golden cross. So I'm totally open to the idea of this long-term ratio. Remember, this hit a peak when all the small caps peaked. We're now setting a trough. We have higher lows and higher highs. So I'm just going to watch this pattern play out and see if it changes. And if this does change, then I will be totally open, right? The IWM chart that I talked about earlier, that confluence of demand that she's fallen into, I'll totally be open to that, outperforming the QQQ chart that we looked at, which doesn't look nearly as good. QQQ looks fine, don't get me wrong. I think they all look the same, and they're all going to rally, and then they're all going to sell, and then they're all going to rally again. But just don't lose sight of where it's come from, right? You just had 3 up days. This is already day 5 of this sequence. Watch this pair chart. Watch IWM QQQ. Let's take a look at the other ones. Watch the TLT versus SPY. This looks like a huge bear flag to me, right? So it's entirely possible that if the weakness that I'm talking about in SPY comes, that this could remain range bound and keep going higher. This is an ascending channel. It looks like a bear flag, but it's also a series of higher lows and higher highs. And until they get below the 0.28 low here, it's entirely possible she can go set another high. And then from that configuration, she goes lower. The put call, like, what's the fear look like? Well, we kind of peaked out in fear in May. This date here at the beginning of May, which we've talked about with the trend, right? So, like, this trend here back in May, that we got that 0.3 reading that we talked about, May 13th. You know, and we've got that aligning with the put call peak, and then this like erosion of fear, but still it hasn't gone away. It hasn't gone straight down, right? It's kind of subsiding. And what I would say is, again, I'm looking for this, one more rally in SPY and then a sell-off in SPY, more fear to come into the market. It's kind of from where I sit what it looks like, but the trend keeps putting in this coil here. So we're going to see what happens. Yeah. So let's wrap up this video. Let's take a look at gold real quick. Yeah, nothing happening. Avoid, avoid, avoid. Let's look at TNX. We talked about how I thought this was a head and shoulders topping pattern. I did call this monthly pattern. Let's turn all the indicators back on. I called this. I said, go back and look, how many times does she close outside the bands for 2 or more monthly closes and then not revert to mean? Okay? And it happens every time. Every single time. Close 2 times out, go back to the 10, go back to the 20, all the way to the top of the band. Right? Was at the bottom, now at the top. Close below, same thing here, all the way to the top of the band. Close below, all the way back to mean. Right? Close below, all the way back to mean. Close below, all the way back to mean. It's just how it works. Okay? So if that were to play out here, what would happen? 2. Maybe even 1.6. My conservative target was 2.5. this yellow line. But from where I sit, these things roll over on the daily first. This has rolled over on the daily. We're below the 40. We're below the 10. We're below the 20. The 10's crossed below, right? The bottom of the band is now pointing down. Now, I will say daily PPO is back to the 0 line, and this thing has been in an uptrend, and this is generally where she tends to outperform. After mean reversion, right, is momentum resetting to 0. When we've done this, you tend to see another impulse. So I'm open to the idea of a rally here off of this low, this 272 low, if they can hold it. Definitely. If they can't, then you're coming all the way back down here to 2.3 and this $2 long-term trend line. And this is why I believe bonds and IWM can rally. Because if you look at this chart, it's essentially negatively correlated to IWM. And it is negatively correlated to TLT. So those are the setups that I see that I'm watching. This TNX, this chart is very, very important. And it's not something to ignore. Let's take a look at a couple of the charts that I'm currently playing. Right, I'm in ENPH. This 195 level will be very interesting, but let's take a look at the weeklies across the board. I don't want to give you my bias just yet. From where I sit, this is correlated pretty tight, and this is a nice sell setup right here at 197. But if she can get above 197 and she can get above 220, she's heading to all-time highs. There's just no other way this pattern resolves. You see this pattern all the time. It's a zigzag. 3 waves up, 3 waves down, 5 waves in the C. That's how it works. Boom. Boom. And now we're in something like a 1-2 setting up for the final impulse higher. That is definitely possible, right? This big old APC completed. Maybe it's possible that this is some longer term triangle that's playing out. I don't know, right? PPO on the monthly is resetting to 0. It's what you want to see. Let's take a look at PLTR, putting in a monthly pivot. Look at that wick. I'd love to see how this thing closes, especially if she can get back above 911. You look at the weekly, beautiful, beautiful descending channel, found demand right off the channel line. And now we put in the weekly higher low going to fill this gap. Again, not even above weekly EMA 5, not above the 10. What is the play? It's the same play on every chart. We're selling a declining weekly 5, weekly 10, weekly 20, depending on the chart. And then we will look to buy back at the 5, the 10, the 20 on the daily. All right, and until we can get above these weekly levels, this is a long-term downtrend that you cannot just buy and hold in. You need to see some momentum on the daily hold, okay? And I'm a daily, hourly time frame guy. I'm not sitting through weekly corrections. That's not what I do. What I want to see is this daily chart come all the way up here to about $10. I want to see momentum roll over. I want to see them come challenge this level that they just built, right? This base that they just built, this bull flag. I want to see this play out to the 942, the $10 level. I want to see them come back and test that level and then leave. Now look, they can come above the 40, get all the way up to $11 and then pull back. They can do that too. But I think that's the less probability bet. I like PLTR a lot. I like ENPH a lot. I do like KWEB a lot. I love what's happening here in China names. Fundamentally, they've got the backdrop that you want to see, right? They're easing. We are tightening, or the U.S. is tightening. And I will say this long-term downtrend, you're starting to break above. This is what you need to see. This breakout gap held. They could never fill the gap. They tried, they couldn't fill it. So what do you want to do when you play a breakaway gap? You want to wait to see if they can set a new high relative to the high that was set during the initial gap. They did that. You want to see them pull back and test the gap window. They've done that. You want to see the gap fill hold. They've done that. And then you want to see the tide turn. You want to see momentum flip. That's pretty much what you've done. And look at this chart. Look at PPO. Look at the ADX. And look at where she is in terms of this trend. And what I've been saying about all of these moving averages, look at where the 5 and the 10 and the 20 are now. All she's got to do is get above the May 16th high at 28.43, and she's above pretty much all the short-term moving averages. You get above $30, you're above the 20. And then that opens this rally for another 20% leg up before the next pullback. So I like KWEB a lot here. And I know it's probably not even on most people's scanners. That's the best part about it. And what has she just done? Like, we've been watching this chart for a very long time. We didn't buy any of this. None of this. I just entered down here on this candle. I love the wick. I love the demand. I love the breakaway gap on the daily. I love all of that. And it's possible she's coming way, 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 way lower. We don't have that yet, though. It's possible that this is the demand level right here, and that she will rally back. And really, like, I know this is hard to believe, just a normal retrace would be a rally to $52. That's it. So if you're a bear, what are you looking for? New lows? Okay, 21% lower. Your risk, right? Just your risk to the 10 is 34%. Your risk to the 20 is 100% higher. 100%. So good luck shorting China stocks. That's not a bet I would make. Yeah, watch KWEB. It's definitely on my radar. Yeah, I think that's about it. We'll wrap this video up. If you like the content, hit like the button, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.